it is great to see you, man. And one of the things I've always got a soft spot, I guess, for you was when I had my show on Rogers Television on the mic with Rudy Blair. You
Hmm.
were literally one of the first people I contacted to be on the show
Wow.
because and of course it was many years ago, but even back then you were so musically talented, unorthodox, but at the same time you were creating sound. You weren't copying sound, and you
Right.
were creating visual art.
Hmm.
Whereas people were again just following whatever was happening with trends or whatever. And as we speak now on this whole new project, I'm not even sure if I call it new music. Do I call it literature? Do I call it just what? Again, man, here you are breaking ground again. So I want to thank you for back then, and I want to thank you so much for this interview now.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's a real blessed introduction, and I appreciate you for. I mean, as a legend in the
Oh,
game of and as a legend who interviews legend, I felt like you recognizing what we were up to was special because a lot of people are kind of like, well, I don't know where it fits, so I can't, so I don't know. Oh, I don't know, but I think it takes a person of vision to see a person of vision. So I appreciate you.
I appreciate it. It's funny you say that though, because I was just thinking of Willow Smith, who is just releasing
Mhm.
a new album. And if you've had a chance to hear it, and folks who haven't had a chance to hear it, I was not a Willow Smith fan, period. But when
Mhm.
I heard this album, I thought this is very unique because she is going off the trend of whatever is supposed to be out there, but what she's doing and saying is actually really good. You've
Mhm.
always been like that yourself. What is it about artists like yourself and her not following trends, but following your heart for what you feel
Mhm.
is like? Is it like a creative thing where if you try to follow everybody else, like you'll turn to stone or something because you just can't do it?
Yeah, I mean, I can't even follow myself. If I try to do what I did last year, I can't do it. Like I can do it. I'm capable of it, but it's just not interesting to me. And I think that has to do with why you start doing art in the first place, which has to do with who you are in the first place. Like if you like I followed Willow and her brother when they were like 5, 6 years ago when they were just really small. And I wasn't always into what they were making, but I always appreciated that they were talented and they always said something that was unique and original. And I feel like that's always my drive, like you alluded to. It's like a lot of artists will go when they decide, hey, what do we make next? They will go, well, what's out there? And how can what's hot and how can we align ourselves with it? For me, I go inside. I don't go out. I go inside. I go, what do you need to say right now? And I think when you do that, you're always going to come up with something that isn't out here because we're each unique. And so if you're self-aware and you're being honest, your inner vision is going to be very different from what's out here. And that takes a lot of courage because it's easy to get validation just doing what's already been validated.
But the thing is with you, it's not just like I said musically or what you write as literature.
Yeah.
And it's also not just the fact and what you do as a look. It's
Mhm.
also the people around you
Yeah.
are part of that. Talk a little bit about that because I think that's very
Right.
important because it's all part of the art.
Yeah, absolutely. And you got that because I remember when we came back, when we passed through, I came with the crew and they were all like, we were all just wearing art. We all were art. And I feel like for me, it's just about being creative and extending the creativity outside, like not just containing it to the music, but why would you do very original music just to like cloak it in a very like regular appearance. So for me, it's like we want you to just look at us, and the second you look at us, you know that it's different. You don't know how yet, maybe, but you know that it's different. And so the same energy we want you to feel in the music, we want you to feel when you see us, we want you to feel when you hear us speak. It's like all of that is the creativity for us. So it's a kind of a total creativity, and that's really what really gets me excited, and the people around the crew. Like, most of the people I work with, I've worked with them for years. We got relationships. They're like family. Like, it's a really tight knit crew because we're all on that same wave and on that same vibe. And so when you find those people that are your tribe, you're like, oh, you're weird, you're weird, you're weird, I'm weird. So now we're all not weird because we're all together. So we've established sort of a normalcy of weirdness, you know what I mean? And that's how we get our validation, is from validating each other's creativity.
You used the term normalcy.
Mm-hmm.
That would have been 2 years ago.
Yeah.
But because of what's happened in this last year and a half, not just with COVID, but the things that we saw in the United States that led to Black Lives Matter,
Mm-hmm.
what has happened here in Canada, not just with Black Lives Matter, but the finding of the Indigenous children, their bodies,
Mm.
the things that we've seen on social media. 2 years ago, the term Karen was just, "Hey Karen, how you doing?" Now that term Karen is used for something completely different. Things
Mm-hmm.
are being shown on social media in a completely different way. Has that energy changed for you in your creativity because the energy of the world has changed the way it has?
It's a lot of people have come to me as this whole thing was unfolding, and people know that I'm a thoughtful guy, even though a lot of the music we make is just boisterous and fun. And they go, well, why don't you make something for these times? And the short answer is no. Like, it hasn't changed, because everything that I was doing, just as being a Black person in this environment, and being and thriving and being happy and being authentic and knowing where you come from and being real when you present yourself, that's all about what's been happening, right? Because I think it's the what we've been fighting and what we've seen unfold is an attempt to sort of take that away, a sort of attempt to take away that freedom, take away that self-expression, take away that that power to create your own reality, to live your own life, to be free to, walk in the street, to just drive down the street, to just walk into a store. And, you can look on YouTube and you will see a whole subspecies of YouTube videos, which is Black people getting harassed just for living, right? And in terms of our struggle in this country, I mean, it's a lot of people still trying to tell themselves the mythology that, Indigenous people are just looking for a handout. And then even when something like the residential schools and all these bodies, these tiny bodies and these tiny graves by the thousands have been dug up, there are still people trying to lie to themselves and say that, that's not real, because the mythology is more important to them than the reality. But, for me as an artist, I don't try to speak to that, because as an artist, if you're creating real art, authentic art, self-aware art, you're already speaking to that. You're already speaking to the power of self-determination, to the power of I feel like as a Black man, to go to that, like yourself, like living your life, being creative, like the legacy that you've built in our city and in our country and beyond, that is the political statement. You know what I mean? It's like, and I think Indigenous people say the same thing. Despite everything, we are still here. And we're not just here, we are thriving. We are making art. We are expressing ourselves. And you can't stop that. And as long as so you see what I'm saying? Sometimes you don't actually need to say anything other than, I am here and I am thriving and I'm eating good and I'm happy. And as
But
long as I'm doing that, there's the victory.
but something must have changed, because as we go and talk about this, and again, I say project,
Right.
this is your story. So to me, something in the last 2 years made you say, this is the time now to do this. Can you talk a little bit about this, please? Because again, it is in so many different elements. That's why I have to say, use the term project.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is that the book was done before COVID began.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the album was made sort of in the middle of 2020. And so, but Rudy, I really believe that I think for me in my life, it was a time where I was ready to tell the story in a different way, to tell the story in a more naked, more vulnerable way. But I did that prior to all of this happening. But yes, it's relevant. It just so happened that, what's happened is we are now appreciating that these things, we appreciate authenticity a little bit more now. We appreciate vulnerability a little bit more now. We appreciate realness a little bit more. But sadly, what happened with George Floyd happened in 2019 and 2018 and a couple times before that. In fact, the time that really shook me personally, because I'm a runner. I like to get up in the morning and run through the woods like a wild child raised by wolves. That's just how it makes me feel good. And so the Ahmaud Arbery shooting really got me in a way, because here's this guy just doing what I do every day, just trying to get fit and stay, get some meditation, listen to his music, and they hopped off the stoop and chased him down with a posse and shotgunned him to death in the street. And that affected me more. And the point I'm trying to make is that I was already on the track of authenticity and realness and presenting myself in this new way. But so what happened hasn't really changed that, because human nature hasn't really changed. They were already doing that previous to. They were already shooting Black men down in the streets. They were already pretending in residential schools didn't happen. There were previous pandemics and previous panics around them and previous disinformation around them. Like this isn't, none of this is new, sadly. And for me as an artist, it just so happened that I was on that wave of just like, look, you know what, the world doesn't need more shiny chains right now. What the world needs is more realness right now. And I was kind of already on that. So when they came to me and said, hey, can you make something for these times? I said, I'm always making something for these times. But you are correct. It's like there is a big shift here. And the shift is literature, which is one of my great loves, is now part of the creative package. And I think that wasn't there before. And so now you can actually see the way my mind works as opposed to the way my talent expresses itself and shows up. It's a deeper engagement with the issue, but for me, they're one and the same. Like for me, the book Saga Boy is the journey, and the album Saga King is the celebration at the end of the journey. But they're both inextricably linked, and they're both inextricably linked to this time because, again, people haven't changed that much. We our focus is a little different, but my focus has always been on this, on what is real, on the legacies, on the histories that we are living. And this was just a time, why did I choose it? It had mostly to do with my personal journey. I was at a point where I felt like, man, I'm trying on these new futures like jackets that didn't fit. Oh no, not this one. Try on another, not this one. And then I was like, look, man, an amazing thought hit me. It was like, until you make peace with your past, you cannot properly live your future. And I think you can see that in you could say the same thing about the legacy of America and slavery and Jim Crow. You can say the same thing about the residential school system and Canada and how we treat Indigenous people. These struggles have always been here, but my personal struggle just seemed to come on the scene at the exact time when everyone was focusing on this sort of global, universal human nature struggle, is what I would say.
So I want to make sure people understand, because you've mentioned the two elements. There's a book, there's an album.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Both have different names, but they're both connected. It's funny,
Right.
the last time I talked to somebody about something like this, Sting did this, I'd say maybe about 15 years ago, where he had a
Right.
book and he had an album. So explain exactly again what the book is,
Right.
and then explain what the album is, because both elements are you.
Yeah, and I'm really glad you said that, because I was going to ask you, because people have been asking me who's done this before, and I was like, well, I don't really know. So I'm glad you mentioned that. I didn't really check that for that album and book from Sting, but I will now. From my point of view, it's like, my grandmother, and really what the book is about is a memoir. So in short, to answer your question, the book is a memoir, Saga Boy, which is a Trinidadian term, um, speaking about a kind of a Trini playboy. He's always got his pretty shirt and his style, and he loves the woman, but there's a dark side to it too, because who is he leaving at home and who's he leaving behind when he leaves? And my granddad was like that. My dad was like that. And I was a little bit like that too. So that's really what it's about, legacies of the past. So I grew up with my grandmother deep in the jungles of Trinidad, in the bush, in down south, as they say. And I grew up with my grandma, and she taught me two things. She taught me how to read from reading the Bible, because she loved to read, but she was 82. Her eyes were bad. So she taught me how to read when I was like 3 years old, so I could be her eyes. And the second thing she taught me was how to sing. She was always singing, mostly hymns, but she could carry a tune. In the morning, wake up like a bird singing. At night, she's singing. If she's happy, she's singing. If she's sad, she's singing. And the whole town, the village, a one road village through the bush, everyone would just stop and listen to her sing. And so that's my legacy, because to this day, that's how I exist in the world, through literature and through music, through words and through singing. And in a way, it's this whole project, as you say, is a celebration of those legacies. And so it's a celebration of all the history that put us there on that island in the first place, and all the history of the crown and the colonialism, and how all of that played out, and and my personal legacy of struggle, and the way the two intertwine it was to me a fascinating story. But it's my history, it's how I grew up. And to understand myself, to find that coat that fits so I could determine my future, I had to understand the past. And when I went back, I couldn't understand me without understanding my parents. I couldn't understand them without understanding their parents. I couldn't understand them without understanding the whole island and the history and the culture. So that's what the book's about. The book's the story of me growing up in this island, and I'm 11 years old. And one day I go to sleep in the bush, in the tropical bush, and I wake up in a blizzard in Northern Ontario. And nothing was the same, to quote Drake. Everything had changed. And really the book is about how I pick up the pieces from that really dramatic event that kind of interrupted the way my life was going. The album is tied into a lot of the same themes about understanding yourself, about personal growth, about becoming yourself. But the album is kind of like the end of the destination, right? Like that's why I call it Saga King, because it's like the king has arrived. There's a sovereignty of claiming that you have over yourself after being the boy and growing through it and becoming a man and still trying to figure it out. And one day you wake up and you feel powerful. You feel like you've grown into your skin. And the album is the party you throw when that happens.
I'm curious because the music and the stories are so powerful. Is there a chance that you could either put this on the stage, meaning as a play? Could this be also something that could be an animated something or a, mini movie something? Because I
We've
feel
been
like this has much more legs than just the literature and just the music.
we definitely have, offers have been made. I won't go into details, but we have been approached for a mini series, a TV series, a movie, a feature movie, not for an animated one just yet, but I mean, we've definitely been approached, but we've kind of been, the story of the book is still unfolded. The book has been nominated for, shortlisted for a couple awards already.
Yeah.
It comes out in the US in September 14th. And so like humbled by the Ontario Speakers Award has shortlisted it. The Toronto Book Awards has shortlisted it. It has gotten an embarrassment of riches in terms of critical acclaim on both sides of the border. And so we kind of felt like, look, we don't know what this is. Let's before we sort of commit to a path prematurely, let's let this thing live its life and to its fullest, and then we'll understand where it fits. But I feel a lot of the comments are around the epicness of the characters, the bigness of the story, the humanity of the story. Like, you don't have to be Black or Trinidadian or even an immigrant to see yourself reflected in the story. And so there is that potential, but we're saving that for another day. We got a lot more pressing matters for now. But yeah, thank you for raising that though. That's a high compliment.
You said earlier about weird, weird, weird.
Yeah, yeah.
What do you say then to that person who does point to themselves as weird?
Hmm.
Because you've just proven that weird can be extremely successful.
Yeah. Well, you know what I think? I always say this, look, be radically you, radically you. The things that they make fun of you for today, they will praise you for tomorrow.
Mm.
So lean into it. People always ask me that question. Advice would you give to a younger you? I would say, boy, be more you. Listen to more heavy metal, play more rock music when they told you can't because you're Black. Be in more plays, memorize more poems, like all the things they told me wasn't cool. But I also played basketball. Like I was someone that refused to be defined by what I was supposed to be. So
Amen.
you're Black, you should be listening to this music, dressing this way. Well, I did listen to that music, but I also listened to the music they told me I wasn't supposed to. I was in the band, I was in theater, I was an athlete. I played football, cornerback and wide receiver. I played basketball at the University of Waterloo. So like whenever they told me, they felt like, oh, we know who you are, I was like, no, you don't. I know who I am. Let me show you. And I feel like that's a very human thing. That's something we all, I feel like when we talk about justice in the world for everyone,
Mhm.
what we're talking about is the power to determine who you are without being forced to be something by someone else, whatever that is. And that's what I want for everyone, whether you're queer, straight, indigenous, Black, white, whatever you are. Like, I want you to have the power to determine, to be radically you. As long as you're not hurting anyone, go on, live out. And so that's how I feel about it. That weird, like I've spent 20 years in the music business, Rudy. And like for the longest while, I was like, well, yeah, I could just do that thing that everybody's doing. But then something inside me would be unfulfilled. I never got into music so that I could just be what's popular and do someone else's thing. And at the end, and this is my statement as an artist, and I think it's my statement as a human being, I'd rather fail being myself than succeed being someone else. And I feel like we all got to do that, because even when you fail and you're you, it is the most fulfilling and blessed thing you can possibly do. And so that's just how I feel.
Amen to that. Absolutely agree with you with everything you said. Any chance, because things are slowly opening up in Canada, will we see you performing on stage, festivals,
Hmm.
drive-ins, any of that?
I'm glad you asked. We are going to be headlining the Mix TO Festival Block
Oh,
Party August 21st.
amazing.
So,
Amazing.
and that will be actually my first show with the band in since October 2019, so almost 2 years.
Okay, so then you had a lot of time to rehearse. So,
No, we couldn't get together.
virtually, I know how it all works. It's like what we're doing now. So I'm expecting fireworks.
I mean, we don't. What I can say is we've had a lot of time and a lot of pent up energy, so it's definitely going to be fireworks.
I cannot wait. Cannot wait. John, I want to say thank you so much, my friend, for doing this interview with me. Thank you for the music. Thank you for the creativity. And just thank you for never letting anybody change you for them, but you being you is helping change the way music in society is. Thank you so much for all of this.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it.